All right. Hey, so I'm in a particular position that's a little uncomfortable for me. I'm usually not at a loss for words, but I will be today. My voice isn't actually working too well, so luckily, yeah, thank you. Actually, just for Ron's families to know, how long have you been here? 30?
With IBM, I've been
almost 39 years. 25 of those have been in this building, and some measurable amount of that time has been one chair to the left. So if you don't mind, we'd like you to assume your throne. Okay. So actually, before we get started, we'll have a chance to abuse Ron later on. One of the first people to decide to introduce themselves to me when I moved to Almaden was Ron. I understand I was not the first. I understand that he's made his presence known to my predecessors as well. Paul Horn used to call you Oklahoma. Oklahoma, Almaden, it's an obvious. I moved from Winnipeg to Almaden, what can I tell you? Anyway, so the top of the IBM technical ladder is IBM Fellow. And rather than me talk about what it means to be an IBM Fellow, I would invite another IBM Fellow to come up and do the honors. So, Laura? I didn't tell her to be gentle, by the way. Okay.
Okay, so a lot of you know Ron. In fact, probably everybody knows Ron. We've already made fun of him. I won't do it anymore. He's this nice guy. He asks a lot of questions. We all know that. Okay, end of that. Some of you know him well enough to be afraid of him, to fear him as the astute coach and fearless captain of CS's Olympic championship winning teams 2 years in a row. Yes! Boy, was I glad when it was canceled last year. He had me running laps. Anyway, you probably, or many of you may also know that Ron is one of our standard bearers for the high quality of this lab and the high quality of research. He has been the scourge or bane of applicants for many, many years. I think he goes to every applicant talk in computer science, whether they want him to or not is another story. But seriously, he is somebody who sets a high bar and who achieves at a high rate and pace. And ultimately, that is what you need to do to be an IBM Fellow. The criteria for IBM Fellow are fairly straightforward and simple. You must do something that has a major impact on the industry and ultimately make some difference to IBM and our business. So hopefully your impact on the industry isn't to cause the stock market to crash or something like that, right? Okay. So Ron has in fact done that. But I would bet for all that we know Ron and make fun of Ron and enjoy Ron, that very few of you actually know what he's done. Although probably almost any of you could name one or two things he's done. So I'm not going to try and go through the whole list. After I'm done with this, we'll quiz Ken Clarkson, who will try and actually interpret some of what I'm about to say. But I'll give you a quick history of some of Ron's contributions. in his doctoral dissertation, Ron kind of created the field of finite model theory. Very few of us create a field as part of our PhD dissertations, but Ron did that. That's not why we're making him an IBM Fellow. However, key theorems of that thesis, Fagin's theorem and Fagin's 0-1 law, launched him on his path toward success. When he joined IBM, he goofed off for a few years in Watson. And, I mean, really. And then he came out here and started working on databases and relational databases. And he pioneered some fundamental concepts for database design. In particular, he invented this thing called fourth normal form, and another thing called multi-valued dependencies. And he did some sort of weird work on stuff called acyclic schemas and extendable hashing algorithms. I hated Ron, okay? I have to tell you, my very first database class, they start teaching you all this data model crud. And fourth normal form, guys, gets taught in every single database class to this day. If you suffer through a relational database class, you will learn fourth normal form. The rest of that stuff I got out of the theory fast enough not to have to suffer through much. Okay. But that's not why we're making him an IBM Fellow, although you could say right then and there that he'd made a huge impact on the industry, given how widely these concepts have spread. Ron went on to do something that I always enjoyed since I gave him the problem. He invented a bunch of algorithms for querying and aggregating imprecise data. This turned out, I wanted it for this crazy little project we called Garlic that was about integrating different kinds of data and asking very weird queries about them, and how do you know how to weight the results if some things are if you're looking for red round objects, for example, from an image database, and some things are very red and some things are very round, how do you order them? Was kind of the problem he was trying to solve. The algorithm he came up with, Fagin's algorithm, the man has no modesty, okay?
You actually named it.
I know I did. I named it because in his first paper he called it A0, which I thought was stupid, but he's the one who told me to name it Fagin's algorithm. Anyway, the two key papers on that racked up over 1,800 citations to date. This has turned out to not be so important for federated databases, although it does have some meaning there, but it became rather essential for information retrieval systems, search systems, right? Okay, he created the foundations for data integration and transformation, another piece of work I rather like, with his work on acyclicity back in the old days, and then more recent work with Fokien and even myself a little bit, and Renee Miller and others, where he used the concept of tuple-generating dependencies, applied these ideas broadly to schema mapping, and this is kind of the foundation for how all mapping tools work today. So that was pretty good. That was a pretty good accomplishment. We'll give you credit for that. He also somewhere along the way, this is not in chronological order, sorry, he gave a logical foundation with some colleagues, some very important ones like Joe Halpern and Moshe and others, but he gave a logical foundation to reasoning about knowledge, and they literally wrote the book on the topic. And again, this turns out to have huge implications for distributed algorithms, for cryptography, for privacy and other kinds of secure systems. So lots of places where you need to know what somebody else knows about what you know, right? And so on. Anyway, ask Ron about that later, okay? He'll make that okay. And finally, he did a couple of probably much less known things. In fact, some of his colleagues in the outside world probably don't even know about these. But he has a couple of patents that have made a very, very big amount of difference to IBM and to the industry as well. First, with Mickey Aitai and a number of our folks in storage systems, he invented a highly scalable, widely used method for the differential backup of files. This got used in Tivoli Storage Manager, TSM, that we love to hate. And you know, as some of you know, we had an extraordinary accomplishment for that system. This is only one small piece of it, not trying to take away from the others, but this was a key piece, and that was last year, I think. And then he also has an algorithm for signing encryption keys, and that algorithm has been relicensed so many times that there are now 2 billion secure device cards in the world that all use this algorithm. Both of these algorithms have been such great money earners for IBM that we apparently have over $30 million in revenues just from licensing those patents. And he's won 2, supplemental patent issue awards. I bet they didn't give you 0.1% of what you made for IBM, but that's the way it is. Okay, Ron's been well recognized for everything he's done. He has several awards. I'll just read a few of them. The IEEE Wallace McDowell Award, which is sometimes called the Nobel for computer science, although I don't quite believe that. But but I've seen it called that. He's won a 10-year Best Paper Award in the theoretical community, the Mendelssohn Test of Time Award. He has a IEEE Technical Achievement Award. He has from the Sigmod community, the data community, data management community, the COD Innovation Award, 3 Best Paper Awards. Those are all external recognition. Internally, he's received a corporate award, 8 OIAs, 1 OTAA, and 2 supplemental patent issue awards, as previously mentioned. He's a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, a fellow of the ACM, Association for Computing Machinery, and a fellow of the IEEE. And now he is a fellow of IBM. But IBM Fellow is more than just recognition. It's actually a position that, as was explained to me a couple of years ago, is taken very seriously. It comes with new responsibilities. I don't know if Ron quite understands what he's gotten himself into. In fact, I'm pretty sure he doesn't, because as I recall, Ken and I just kind of signed him up for this with a little help from Michael. And anyway, I thought I'd tell you all what Ron is going to do. He's going to save the world. But you all knew that. More accurately, he's going to save IBM products. We have so many products, and they go in so many different directions. And if you look at some of our most successful products, I'm serious now, Mohan. You were lucky. You got this at an earlier age. It wasn't so important then. No. All right.
Tough room.
Back up. Our best products are really good because they have actually some very strong theoretical foundations. And that actually, I believe, is true. I believe in that. And so Ron's task, whether or not he wants to accept it, is to bring theory and practice together to create products for IBM that will be built on solid theoretical foundations that will make them more powerful, easier to use, and easier to maintain. Now, he doesn't have to do this for our whole product line, okay? But they're better, be at least some. Okay. Now, he doesn't have to do it by himself. Fellows are not known for working individually. In fact, usually they don't make you a fellow until you're driving everybody else around you crazy, which is probably, actually, why Ron's a fellow today. Okay. But he gets to work with system builders, helping them understand what they're doing. Okay, I didn't write that part. But more seriously, helping them try to understand the impacts behind their work and put it on a solid footing. And I will point out that actually this is something that Ron is no stranger to. Both the problems I worked with him on were exactly that. They were situations where we were doing something and we either couldn't figure out why it worked or we couldn't figure out how to make it work. And Ron came in and gave us the theoretical discipline behind that. Okay. And then he will also, in the other direction, try and help the theory team connect with the practical world. Now, this one I gotta see. I don't know who wrote that sentence, but I'll explain why this one worries me in a minute. Okay, and finally, last but not least, he's going to leverage his prestige in the external world to influence that external community to work on topics important to IBM, so that we get better leverage from our own broad set of external relationships. So I think that'll keep him busy for a while. I don't want to hear anything about retirement, Ron. This latest program, not for you. I'm sorry. Okay, so now why do I say that Ron might have trouble connecting the theory groups with practical things? So this is also an homage to a mutual friend of Ron and mine, a gentleman by the name of Moshe Vardi, who many of you know, used to be here as the head of the theory group for a number of years. And Moshe does not believe that you should ever let anyone off the hook without telling the story. So the story is in honor of Moshe. And because Susan wants it. So I've had my doubts about Ron's connection for reality for a while. When I started trying to work with him on what it means to be an IBM Fellow, because he kept saying he wanted to be an IBM Fellow, we'd have these discussions, and I try to teach him about how the company works, right? And so I'd throw out something like, well, okay, so Palmisano's goals for the years, and he'd go, who's Palmisano? No, all right, I exaggerate, but only slightly. I did have to explain his own management chain to him at one point. And any peers were, even in the lab were, okay. So we've done hours of diagramming on my whiteboard. As part of this, at some point, we had a discussion about globalization. And Ron doesn't have a clue, okay? I mean, it's bad enough, within the lab, but he really, he understands there are these other labs because he's been to Haifa a couple times, and he really likes Haifa, but he just doesn't get this whole globalization concept. So I get this brilliant idea. Wish my husband were here, because never again. Okay, Ron, I love you dearly, but never again. Anyway, I decide I have to go visit India as part of my duties as catalyst for science and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to take Ron with me, and I'm going to show him what life in the colonies is like. And I'll show no. Ex-colonies, all right, whatever. They weren't our colonies anyway. No, so I say, all right, Ron, I want you to come with me. We're going to have you do a few talks. And I think I'm being really clever because I won't have to do any talks on this trip. He can do all the speaking for me, and he's got some great talks. I got him signed up to give, 4 or 5 talks. He's talking every day. I only have to talk once in the whole week, so that's great. And I figure we'll introduce him to some of the young people, and he can do some mentoring because I know he's really good at that. And in the course of mentoring them, he's going to learn a little bit about what it's like in the newer research labs, and he'll start to get a sense of their challenges. And all goes well. All goes beautifully. He is received with rave reviews, and things get better and better. Except towards the end of the trip, we're back in Delhi, and that's where my story actually takes place. Okay, so here we are in Delhi, and some very nice friends of mine have said they're going to take us out for the evening real Indian meal in a cute little hole in the wall that you wouldn't dare go into if you weren't accompanied by somebody who speaks the language and knows what they're doing. And then we're going to go out and see a sound and light show at the fort in Delhi, and this is going to be great. And so they drive us in their car, and we get our first experience of a Delhi car park. So for the Indians in the crowd who've been to an Indian car park, this would be meaningful. For the rest of you, I have to tell you that they pretty much have to pick the cars up and put them in the spaces, okay? I'm only exaggerating slightly. I mean, everybody's out of the car, right, to watch the driver get the car in there. There are 3 men directing the driver to get in there. And so I'm fascinated. I'm talking to the wife of this couple while her husband tries to park the car. Ron's standing, the last time I looked, right there. Well, Ron loses the plot, okay? he apparently gets bored with the proceedings or doesn't understand them. I don't know. But the next thing I know, I look up, the husband's getting out of the car, and I look around, and there is no Ron. There is no Ron. Okay, so the Indians among us are cringing now, because the Deadly Bazaar is not like a really good place to get lost. You're right on the edge of Old Town. There are people all around you. There's a lot going on there. Not really a lot of tourists at this particular hour of the day, at this particular time of year. Not that many people speaking English necessarily around you. I look up, I see what I think is the back of Ron's head disappearing around the corner. So I go running. I'm screaming. I have a soft little voice, right? I mean, none of you have ever heard me yell. I am yelling, Fagin, at the top of my lungs. Don't see him anywhere. I emerge into the street, and there's just a sea of heads. Thank goodness his is shiny in the back. Okay, so I see him, and I figure I can still move faster than he can. So I take off. I run after. Sure enough, I almost have to tackle him, but I get him, and I start chewing him out, as you would a small child who's wandered off, right? I mean, because let's face it, this is kind of what he's done. And he's like, I don't see the problem. All right. So, but meanwhile, in the pursuit, my friend has broken the heel of her shoe. Okay, so we were running, and so we ducked down an alley into the bazaar area looking for a replacement shoe, which you can get for about 50 cents because this is Delhi and it's India and it's a market. And we've been wandering through. There isn't one in the first row of things we go, and then we turn again, and at some point Ron turns to me and he says, I would never find my way out of this, would I? I'm like, oh, you can teach him something. So that's my Ron story. At this point, the typical proceedings here is we allow a few other people to comment on him. I'd like to let his most recent manager, who I am sure is at the moment rather thrilled by the fact that I believe he doesn't have to be his manager any longer, come up and say a few words. And then after that, we'll have open mic, so if any of the rest of you are nursing some really good Ron stories, get them ready.
Thank you. Microphone is on, I guess? Okay. So Laura covered a substantial body of work there over the years. I was going to talk about it, and I had a cheat sheet so that I could talk about it, but I won't need it. So I will just add that in addition to his technical contributions, Ron founded the theory group, the group that I am now part of, and I'm at a disadvantage here because I've only been here 5 years. But still, I know something of the way that the theory group works and the contribution that Ron's presence has made to it. And I think that he is a wonderful example of doing well by doing good, if you like. That is that in addition to being really smart and creative and original and things like that, he's also very approachable and enthusiastic and warm and friendly. Everybody up to and now including Ginny is his buddy, but there's a reason for that. I mean, he is genuinely warm, and the way that I've thought about this lately is that I don't know. Most people are they have layers, right? Prickly. Up here, then kind of warm and fuzzy, then psychopathic, or they have issues at some point, or then they're warm and fuzzy, and so on. So Ron is really simple, as far as I can tell, and I mean that in the best possible way. That he just seems to be, sunshine and lollipops all the way down. I'm going to have to grill grill his family later to see whether or not this can actually be true, that this guy is, sunny optimism and genuine warmth and friendliness to other people, consideration for other people, and this actually is a good way to proceed. To say something nice to someone, if you actually can do that. Not everybody, thinks of that. It's a good thing to do. It contributed over the years to a really stellar, great group of in the theory group at Almaden as a whole. And one thing that I should mention about that is that this is all of the wonderful technical work that you did, and where you contributed your own work. It also is I think a statement about the theory group that you grew over the years. It's a statement about the environment here in which you were able to do this work, and I think it's a good thing. It's a good statement about that group, is about IBM Almaden and IBM CS and the IBM theory group as a whole. So it's wonderful that you could do that work here, and that the environment here is part of what led you to be able to do that. I don't have a great story. Let me consult my cheat sheet again. So I just want to close with congratulations, and I'm very happy that this is in many ways. I'm very happy that this has happened here at last, and you're an IBM Fellow. So congratulations, Ron.
Michael has a few words.
No, I don't, actually.
Oh, okay. Others?
But others may.
Come on, guys. All right, good.
There's a microphone right there, actually.
My name's Josh, and my dad, obviously. So, I have a very different perspective from my dad working world than most of you. So I remember, my whole life growing up, just seeing my dad with these research papers constantly, everywhere. These white papers, and he would read them all the time. And we'd be like, at a restaurant, there'd be like 5 minutes lull in the conversation, and he'd be pulling out his papers, we'd be at like a 49er game, and there'd be a break in the action, and he'd be literally pulling out his papers, reading them. He just loves the stuff. So I remember one time, kind of saying, Dad, what is this about? And he was telling me, well, it's if A knows that B knows that C knows that D knows some bit of data, then what does C know about D? And I'm like, Dad, I'm 9. I don't get this stuff. It's right over my head. But no, the bottom line is, he's been a great dad. He really is generally one of the most nicest guys I know, and he obviously just loves what he does. It's not like work to him. He just reads it all the time. He just loves it, and he's I'm so proud of him that he's getting recognized for doing a good job. So.
I'm Susan Fagin, and I don't have a clue what Ron does. We've been married for, many, many, many years. I don't have a clue what he does. I know he loves his job, and it just makes him really happy every day to come home, go back to IBM, and I'm really so proud of him that he's recognized in this way.
Anyone else want to say a few words? Brent does.
Probably a couple of hundred Ron stories in the movie.
Well, I actually don't have a story, but I have a question for Ron. Ron, how do you view the difference between science and technology transfer?
That's a great question.
That's Ron's favorite question for his family's benefit. He asks every new lab director that.
Pick up the microphone, Ron. Microphone.
I'll pass. It's a tough question.
Who's going to get a chance to say something?
I will say something. I'll be.
Yeah. So one of the things I've always liked about Ron is the fact that he's never shy about asking any odd question. A lot of us think, other people might think, I'm a fool or something asking this very simple question and so on. But he never had that kind of feelings, at least from the way, he used to ask things that we would think he should already know, but he wouldn't bother, he'd just ask it. And so he's also very curious, like I think you mentioned, I guess, that he comes to lots of talks and so on. So that's one characteristic, I guess, that a lot more people could emulate, because I don't find even people who are, typecast as, let's say, query optimizers not showing up at the recovery talks and so on. So it's a great characteristic that he has that needs to be appreciated, and congratulations, Ron.
Thank you, Don.
I'd just like to congratulate Ron and tell him that I think he's the kind of a person that the IBM Fellow job was invented for. He's a Renaissance man, and there's just nobody like him. And so, heartiest congratulations to you, Ron. And I wanted to tell people one thing about Ron that all of you may find useful. It turns out that I get a nice free trip to some interesting part of the world every year on account of being Ron's friend. And so many of the rest of you who are friends of Ron may want to look into this and think about it. Some of you may know that I had a hobby when I was working here, and I've continued this hobby since I retired. The ACM runs a programming contest for college students every year. They call it the International Collegiate Programming Contest, and anybody can submit a candidate problem to this contest, and the contests are actually held in regions around the world. There are about 70 regions in the world, and the winners of the regional contests get to go to the World Finals. The World Finals is held in some interesting place every year. It's been in Prague, it's been in Tokyo, it's been in Stockholm. These are nice places to go.
Disney World.
The contest this year is going to be in. I'm having a senior moment here.
I thought it was Prague.
No, St. Petersburg is next year. This year it's in Warsaw.
That's
Warsaw, Poland. So I submitted a problem to the contest this year, and if you have a problem accepted, you get to go to the World Finals and be a judge. So I'll be leaving on Saturday for Warsaw, and that's a nice trip. But the reason what this has to do with Ron is that if one of your problems is accepted for use in the World Finals, you get to be a judge, and they want the problems to be all well-formed and unambiguous, and so that everybody interprets them the same way. So they assign every judge some other judge's problem, and he has to solve it to prove that the problem is well-formed. Well, so I've had pretty good luck in getting problems accepted at this contest. They always send me a problem that some other judge made up, and I look at it and I say, oh, my God. So I get in my car, and I come up here and I say, Ron, what would you do with this problem? So by using Ron as my consultant, I've been able to fake people out. They actually think I've been solving these problems. But now you know who's really been doing it. So if you ever need somebody to solve a problem that makes you scratch your head, Ron's the man to see.
I may have a hint about how Ron's method of solving problems is, because I remember when I first came to work at IBM down in Building 28 on plant site. Of course, Ron was already in the building. Matter of fact, Ron could be seen almost anywhere in the building, because apparently he thinks better walking. And Ron would walk around sort of with his hand against the wall. And he knew, he proved the theorem, but if he did this for long enough, he'd get back to his own office eventually. But I took it up, and I found that, walking around, not worrying about where you're going and thinking about the problems, pretty good idea. Thanks, Ron.
I would like to say that Well, okay, yeah, I'm Teddy Fagin. I'm Ron's son. And I would like to say that I'm really very impressed by all that my dad's accomplished. I wasn't really aware of all of his accomplishments until today. And it really motivates me to achieve success. And I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing about more accomplishments that my dad achieves.
Okay, and you gotta meet me halfway.
I just want to say that Ron has been my scientific hero since 1980, when I learned about Ron's Fagin's theorem. And actually, he's the hero of a very large community, the database theory community. He's extremely well respected. I would just like to say that when the announcement went out that Ron was made an IBM Fellow, I wrote to half a dozen people, actually to a dozen people in the community, close friends, and I let them know that Ron had been named Fellow. Half of them wrote back and said, "Why is this news? I thought he was Fellow for a long time." And then I'd like to tell you a story. As you know by now, Ron does not have a very good sense of direction. And Susan is agreeing with that. That's why you bought him a GPS in the car some time ago, right? So a number of years ago, Jeff Ullman retired from Stanford, and there was a retiring symposium, and Ron was there. You remember that, Ron?
Yes.
And I was there, and Moshe Vardi was there. And there was a nice dinner at the faculty club. And by the time the dinner was over, it was night. And Ron had driven his car, but could not remember where he had parked the car. For the next hour and a half, Moshe, Ron, and I walked around from parking lot to parking lot. Ron was clicking the remote. I was about ready to give up and invite him to stay over at my place in Los Altos. And finally, one car, the lights went on. And Ron went back home that night. So congratulations, Ron.
Okay, any other takers, or do I have to let, oh, you, I'm sorry, Peter.
Hi, this is something that Ron should be proud of besides being an IBM Fellow, and something that should give the rest of us a lot of comfort too, which is that I don't think Ron's going to retire anytime soon, because every time I see him, and this has been true for a long time, every time I see him he seems younger than the day before. And that's a good thing, in a good way. So if you lose a car now and then, don't stress.
He's much nicer than I am. I was going to say he hasn't changed a bit since the day I met him 35 years ago, 32 years ago. It's okay. Anyone else, or do I let Ron have a? Sure, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I'm an assistant in a long line of assistants in computer science, having worked for Laura Haas behind me and now Brent Halpern. And I just want to comment on something that's not technical, but is warm and fuzzy. When I arrived here, I can't remember how many years ago, Ron was the first person I passed in the hallway who said hello. And that has always meant a lot to me. And then when I had the good fortune to move to CS and see him every day in the halls and say hello, that's kind of like dying, going to heaven. And if the essence of what Ron is could be bottled, it would be an elixir that would do so many wondrous things in this world and shoot our stock price to the moon. So here's to Ron. Congratulations, Ron.
Okay, Ron, it's your turn. You're standing between these people and some really good chocolate cake.
Well, thank you, everybody. So there's many people I have to thank for this. Starting with my manager, Ken, I know that to become a fellow requires a huge package, a huge amount of work, a huge number of revisions and all. Ken was a hero. He did that. He did a wonderful job. So I'm very grateful both for the work and for the work and for believing in me enough to do that. So my next two levels of management here have also been wonderful, very supportive of me, Brent and Michael. Now, in Michael in particular, I heard the following from various sources. They informed me that Michael was pulling lots of strings behind the scenes to help make me become a fellow. Apparently necessary strings to pull, so I want to thank Michael for pulling those strings. And I want to thank Michael for knowing which strings to pull. So that requires a lot of wisdom, which Michael has. Keeping up my management chain, John Kelly, our Director of Research. I don't know if you know how IBM Fellow works, how the selection works, but there's a selection committee consisting of senior VPs of IBM, including John Kelly, and they get into a room and they talk about the candidates, and the person who presents my case was John Kelly. So if John had not been sufficiently enthusiastic, I would not be standing here as a fellow. So I'm very grateful to John for his believing in me enough to make a case that somehow convinced the other senior VPs to make me a fellow. And then finally in my line of management is Ginny, and who I met at the reception for new IBM Fellows in New York last month. And so I cannot speak firsthand about her business acumen, which I assume is wonderful, but I can speak firsthand about her personal qualities. So she's very charming, she's very warm, she's very sincere, and she's very smart. I can tell from talking to her. And if you go to my homepage and near the top of the page, you'll see a link to pictures of me with Ginny, including one where she's giving me a big warm hug. So that's my favorite picture. So my previous management chain was also really good for me. So Fakian was my previous manager. And I think on the very first day Fakian was my manager, he said to me, "I don't know why you're not an IBM Fellow." Now, you can't ask for a better start between a manager and an employee than on the very first day the manager says you should be an IBM Fellow. So Fakian's been a wonderful supporter over the years, and I'm very grateful. Laura Haas, who you can tell, I mean, I have a very special warm spot in my heart for Laura. She's done wonderful things for my career. I mean, she told you a lot of those things. I mean, I think it started with Laura and me in the mid-'90s when she came to my office one day and said, "Okay, Mr. Database Theoretician, I've got a serious problem." And so I worked on it, and that led to lots of work with Laura. And then when she got her next project, I thought, Laura Haas is a winner. Where Laura goes, I go. So I went to work with her on that, and it also led to a lot of really good stuff. Also, among other people who've been really supportive of me are two retired IBM Fellows are wonderful people. Don Chamberlain, who just heard from, and Pat Sillinger, who couldn't be here today. And finally, the warmest spot in my heart goes to my family, who are my biggest supporters, and I'm very, very grateful for and very happy for their love and support.
You actually never answered Brent's question.
Oh, yeah. The answer to the question is science is the basis for everything. So if you don't have good science, you've got nothing. So you've got to hire those scientists to do the first-rate science that makes everything else work. So that's the right answer.